Have you ever looked at a man and a woman together and wondered if they are truly speaking the same language? Not the words they say, but the instincts behind them, the desires, the fears, the priorities. Society tells us they are equal in mind, in will, in essence. But if that were true, why does so much conflict still arise between them? Why do relationships crumble, expectations go unmet, and misunderstanding persist no matter how far progress claims to have come? Schopenhauer did not ask these questions gently. He did not pretend men and women were two sides of the same coin. He saw them as fundamentally different forces, coexisting, clashing, complementing, but never truly converging. To him, the world's greatest lie was that love unites us in understanding. He believed it only veils the deeper divide, one carved by biology, sharpened by instinct, and denied by modern illusion. He did not write out of bitterness or romance, but from observation. Cold, cutting, and unapologetic. His words are not comfortable. They do not flatter, but they ring with a kind of clarity that frightens those who've built their identity on sameness. This is not a story of hatred. It is not a cry for male superiority or female submission. It is a confrontation with reality, unwelcome but necessary. Schopenhauer dared to ask what most never will. What if our failures in love and understanding are not the result of ignorance, but of denying truth itself? What if the discomfort we feel when we hear these ideas is not proof they are wrong, but proof they are real? This is the truth about women, as Schopenhauer saw it: brutal, biologically rooted, and almost entirely ignored. If you're ready, we begin. But once you see it, you can't unsee it. There are truths so dangerous that even whispering them invites outrage. Not because they are false, but because they violate the comforting illusions people build their lives upon. Schopenhauer understood this better than anyone. He didn't seek comfort. He sought truth, no matter how bleak, no matter how offensive. And the truth he saw, the one few dare confront, is that the modern view of women is built not on reason, but on denial. In an age where equality is treated not as a principle, but as an absolute, the suggestion that men and women might be fundamentally different is heresy. But Schopenhauer made no apologies. He saw that the sexes were not mirrors of each other, not interchangeable partners in a grand romantic myth. They were opposites, not just in body, but in spirit, in instinct, in purpose. And pretending otherwise, he believed, would only lead to confusion and collapse. This wasn't misogyny. It wasn't resentment. It was the grim recognition that human nature is not fair and never has been. Schopenhauer saw that beneath the surface of polite society lies a deeper order, one governed not by ideals, but by survival. The instincts that shape men and women were not chosen. They were carved by evolution, indifferent to fairness, blind to justice. To speak of this today is to be labeled cruel, regressive, hateful. But Schopenhauer did not care for labels. He knew that lies, no matter how well-meaning, always rot from within. A society that builds its foundations on fantasy cannot stand. The premise is forbidden because it threatens the entire structure. If men and women are not the same, not in thought, not in instinct, not in aim, then everything we've been told about love, equality, and gender collapses. And that is exactly what terrified him most. The body never lies. Before a word is spoken, before a thought is formed, the body already knows what it wants, what it fears, what it is built to do. Men and women are not born blank. They arrive carrying the weight of thousands of generations. Instincts honed for survival, not for modern ideals. This is the root of the divide, not some ancient prejudice or outdated tradition, but nature itself. Every society that has endured, from the tribal to the imperial, recognized this divide, not through philosophy, but through necessity. Men and women were not given the same tasks because their natures demanded different things. One is built for pursuit, the other for preservation. One extends outward, the other draws inward. This difference is not superficial. It lives in the bones, the blood, the reflexes. What changed was not nature, but language. In the modern world, we call this social construct. We tell ourselves that instinct can be overwritten by education, that sex is irrelevant, that masculinity and femininity are costumes we can remove at will. But despite the rhetoric, the body still obeys older laws. Men, even when civilized, chase risk, conflict, and conquest, not because they're taught to, but because their biology demands a legacy beyond the self. Women, regardless of ideology, seek safety, stability, and continuity, not as weakness, but as a biological directive to protect life at its most vulnerable stage. This isn't hierarchy, it's division. And it was never about fairness, it was about function. The problem arises only when we expect sameness, when we punish men for being restless and women for being cautious, when we measure both by the same standard and call difference a defect. Nature does not care if this offends. It only cares that the system works. And it always has. Emotion comes first, thought comes later. And by the time reason enters the room, the decision has already been made. This is the quiet tyranny that governs much of human behavior. But in women, it takes on a particular form. Their strength lies not in the abstract, but in the immediate. In reading tone rather than argument, feeling tension before it erupts, bending situations without appearing to touch them at all. What drives this isn't weakness. It's instinct, precise, calculating, often invisible. While men may bury themselves in ideas or chase ideals that offer no reward, women by nature are attuned to the tangible. Their decisions orbit survival, not speculation. Safety, not glory. Connection, not conquest. That is not a result of oppression. It is the strategy of something far older than civilization itself. The mind may speak in logic, but the body speaks in urges. And women, more than men, are tethered to this bodily wisdom. They sense threat before it shows itself. They calculate risk without conscious thought. They gravitate toward power, not because they worship it, but because they know it protects. These impulses are not taught. They are inherited. Instinct is not a voice. It is a current. It moves without asking, pulling thought into its shape, dressing desire in noble disguises. And for women, this current flows through everything: relationships, choices, ambitions. Reason might appear on the surface, but beneath it, nature steers the ship. Men delude themselves with logic, believing they are above biology. Women rarely make that mistake. They don't speak of instinct. They live it. And that, perhaps, is their deepest advantage. Not in intellect, not in strength, but in the power to follow their instincts without question, while men destroy themselves trying to pretend they have none. What people call love is not what they think it is. It dresses itself in poetry, promises, and passion, but beneath the surface, it serves a colder master. Nature does not care for romance. It only cares for replication. And love, in its most intense and irrational form, is simply the bait. A powerful illusion designed not for happiness, but for continuation. Desire is not random. A man is drawn to beauty, to youth, to fertility, not because of choice, but because of programming. A woman is drawn to strength, to security, to to dominance, not out of sentiment, but necessity. Each attraction is a signal, a code, a message sent by the body, not the soul. It feels like fate, it feels like magic, but it's strategy. Silent, biological, relentless. In this arrangement, neither side is innocent. Men offer devotion to secure intimacy. Women offer affection to secure protection. These exchanges are rarely spoken aloud, and even more rarely acknowledged. But they happen all the same, and once the terms are fulfilled, once nature has what it wants, the fire dims. The passion fades, the illusion begins to crack. What was once called eternal now feels suffocating. What once seemed perfect now appears ordinary. And the couple, confused and disillusioned, believes something went wrong. Nothing went wrong. The illusion simply served its purpose. It was never designed to last. This is the tragedy hidden beneath every great romance. The feeling that promised everything was never yours to keep. It belonged to nature, and she only lent it to you for a moment. The poets speak of love as salvation, but biology has no use for salvation. Only cycles, only reproduction. And once that is complete, the illusion no longer serves. Love ends where nature ends. And that's where reality begins. Power does not always arrive with noise. It doesn't always raise its voice or wear a crown. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it smiles. Sometimes it looks harmless while steering the entire direction of a life. While men have historically claimed power through strength, command, and open confrontation, women have shaped outcomes in quieter ways, through influence, suggestion, and emotional leverage. It is a different kind of dominance, not built in battles or debates, but in the space between words, in glances, in silences. Women, by nature, do not often challenge power directly. They learn to move around it, to soften it, to redirect it. They do not need to conquer the throne when they can control the man who sits on it. This influence is rarely acknowledged, yet it decides everything. It decides who leads, who submits, who sacrifices. It determines which battles are fought and which are avoided. Not by force, but by persuasion. Not with orders, but with emotional precision so subtle most never see it happening. Beauty becomes a weapon, but not the only one. Far more powerful is the ability to read others, to sense motive before it's confessed, to guide someone into thinking they chose what was actually chosen for them. This is not manipulation in the crude sense. It is instinctual strategy, refined through evolution. Power, when exercised through force, is visible and resisted. But when it moves through emotion, it passes unchallenged. Men build the structures, but women shape the decisions that sustain them. Influence from the shadows does not make it less real. In many cases, it makes it more effective. Not all rulers wear titles, and not all revolutions begin with war. Some begin with a whisper from someone who never raised their voice at all. Some chase what could be, others guard what is. This is the quiet fracture between the male and female mind, not just in how they feel, but in how they move through time. One reaches forward, stretching into the unknown. The other remains anchored in the present, alert to what surrounds them, cautious of what might threaten their balance. It is not a matter of intelligence. It is a matter of instinct. Men are drawn to the distant, to legacy, to dreams that may never be fulfilled. They gamble their youth for future glory, endure suffering for abstract goals, chase shadows with names like greatness, freedom, immortality. The reward is often empty, but still they run. Not because they want to, because something in them demands it. Women see this and turn away, not out of fear, but out of clarity. Their instinct does not lead them into the fog of ambition. It draws them to what is near, what is stable, what can be touched and known. security, not speculation, comfort, not conquest. This is not small-mindedness. It is survival. The present must be preserved before the future can be pursued. This difference shapes everything: how love is given, how choices are made, how risk is weighed. A man will burn 10 years for an idea. A woman will question why he must burn at all. He sees a future that justifies the pain. She sees a present that is slipping away. Neither view is wrong, but they are not the same. When they try to live as if they are, resentment grows. One feels dragged down, the other feels abandoned, and yet both are following the only time their nature understands. One is living for tomorrow, the other is fighting to keep today from falling apart. It always begins the same: the overwhelming pull, the sense of fate, the feeling that this person, out of everyone, finally understands that love, this time, will be different, that the past was preparation for something lasting. But slowly, quietly, that certainty begins to dissolve. The spark fades, the mystery turns to routine. The intensity that once felt immortal becomes something ordinary, maybe even irritating. This unraveling is not an accident. It is not caused by failure, laziness, or betrayal. It is built into the illusion itself. What felt eternal was never meant to last. It was a biological fever, a temporary madness meant to drive two people together long enough to bind them, long enough for nature to fulfill its role. After that, the curtain falls, and what remains is not romance, it is reality. Many fight against this decline. They chase the early rush, mistaking its departure for a problem to be solved. Others grow resentful, convinced they've been tricked or disappointed. But the truth is simpler and more cruel. The feeling was never real in the way we hoped. It was a means, not an end. Nature has no interest in keeping love alive once its purpose has been served. What's left afterward is something colder, quieter, sometimes stronger, sometimes emptier. A partnership without illusion. A connection stripped of its disguise. Some stay, many leave. Most mourn what they thought would last. The tragedy is not that love ends. The tragedy is that we keep expecting it not to. We treat the illusion as a promise, not a phase. And when it disappears, we grieve as if something was stolen. But nothing was stolen. We were only ever borrowing a lie, one powerful enough to make us believe in forever, until it vanished, as it always does. No society survives without structure. Every empire, tribe, and nation that endured did so because it understood the roles its members were built to fulfill. Stability is not born from dreams. It is maintained through discipline, repetition, and the balancing of instincts. In this, the role of women was never secondary. It was foundational, not in public conquest, but in private continuity, not on the battlefield, but in the quiet preservation of life. For centuries, this role was respected, not out of oppression, but out of recognition. Women guarded the home, the bloodline, the emotional core of the community. Their instincts for safety, care, and proximity were not seen as lesser, but as necessary. They tempered the male impulse toward risk with a force of equilibrium. One destroyed and built, the other preserved and protected. But as civilization changed, so did the narrative. The desire to extend equality turned into a campaign to erase difference. Traits once seen as natural became labeled as limitations. Emotion became a weakness. Nurture became subservience. And the idea emerged that progress meant making men and women interchangeable. But interchangeable parts do not make a living system. They make machines. What happens when society elevates emotion above reason in its highest institutions? When comfort is placed above discipline? When short-term security outweighs long-term vision? These are not abstract concerns. They are the signs of a structure shifting away from what it was built to withstand. The influence of women was never meant to govern the whole. It was meant to stabilize the center. When stretched beyond its design, the very traits that once grounded society begin to corrode it. The intention may be noble. The result is often chaos. Civilization depends on balance, and balance demands that each part remembers what it was made to hold. Not all morality is built the same. Some are forged from principle, abstract, cold, unwavering. Others grow from need, from circumstance, from emotion. When people speak of ethics, they imagine a single standard, a universal compass pointing toward what is right. But reality is not so unified. There are different kinds of right, and some of them bend. What men call moral, they often tie to law, to consistency, to sacrifice. They hold ideals above sentiment, even when it hurts them. They believe in fixed lines, rules that should not be crossed, even when no one is watching. This isn't virtue, it's structure. It's the need to submit emotion to something higher. But women move differently. Their morality is not built in the abstract. It lives in the immediate, in the personal, in the relational. It flexes, it adapts. It serves not the law, but the outcome. Right and wrong are measured not by consistency, but by consequence. What protects, what secures, what keeps the people they care about close and safe. This is not deception. It is instinctual strategy. A morality tuned not for philosophy, but for survival. One that doesn't ask, is this just? But rather, does this help? It is morality without rigidity, empathic, reactive, and often, to outsiders, contradictory. This creates a fracture when judged by male standards. Men call it hypocrisy. Women call it sensitivity. Men call it inconsistency. Women call it wisdom. But neither is wrong. They are speaking different ethical languages, built for different roles, shaped by different instincts. To expect them to share the same code is to ignore the truth of nature. Not all morality is born from logic. Some of it is born from life. And life, unlike law, does not care for consistency. It only cares for what works. The modern world claims to be more advanced, more enlightened, more free. But beneath the polished language and polished laws, a deeper confusion lingers, one that comes not from ignorance, but from willful denial. In its effort to correct past injustice, society has not simply raised women. It has flattened the difference. It has turned gender into costume, desire into identity, and biology into taboo. And with each step toward artificial sameness, the dissonance grows louder. We are told that men and women want the same things, think the same way, and are limited only by expectation. But reality keeps breaking through the cracks. The statistics, the conflicts, the quiet misery behind closed doors, all point to a truth no one wants to admit. The sexes are not becoming more alike. They are becoming more lost in misunderstanding. The illusion is seductive because it promises simplicity. If men and women are the same, then all problems are misunderstandings. If difference is erased, then conflict disappears. But the price of that illusion is steep. Men are told to feel more, to want less, to soften. Women are told to climb, to conquer, to harden. And neither becomes happier. Both become alien to themselves. This is not progress. It is displacement. Men cast adrift from their instincts. Women burdened with expectations they never wanted. And all of it enforced not by force, but by shame. Shame for being what nature made them. No law can repeal biology. No slogan can override instinct. The more society denies the core distinctions between the sexes, the more fragile it becomes. Not because difference is dangerous, but because pretending it doesn't exist turns truth into offense. Equality does not require sameness. It never did. But in chasing illusion, we've forgotten that. And now, the cost is showing. Not all truths are meant to comfort. Some exist only to clarify, to cut through illusion, to make sense of what we feel but cannot say. The divide between men and women is one of those truths, too vast to ignore, too dangerous to speak, and too real to ever disappear. But to acknowledge difference is not to declare war. It is not contempt. It is recognition. And without it, there can be no understanding at all. The conflict begins when sameness is forced, when men are expected to desire what they do not, when women are told to become what they never were, when instincts are shamed and biology is treated like a flaw to be corrected. The result is not progress. It is fracture. Resentment builds, not because men and women hate each other, but because they no longer know how to relate to what the other truly is. And yet, difference does not demand division. It demands balance. It demands honesty. The male impulse to conquer is not cruelty. The female instinct to secure is not manipulation. Each is a survival strategy shaped over thousands of years. Each has a role. Together, they do not make enemies. They make a system. But only when both are accepted for what they are, not what ideology wishes them to be. When men stop performing sensitivity, they do not feel. When women stop chasing a form of ambition that hollows them out. When both stop pretending to be each other. The greatest mistake is not in being different. It is in believing that difference must mean inequality. Nature did not create a hierarchy. It created a tension. And from that tension, life is sustained. Understanding begins where illusion ends, and peace begins the moment we stop demanding sameness and start respecting the truth.